I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and thanks, Dan, for inviting me. Dan and I go way back, and I very much, in fact, enjoyed my time when I was in the legislature and in the state senate. It's a much different world in Congress, a much different way of doing things, but I miss that time that I spent here and working with our state leaders. We're going to have a very active year this year in the Transportation Committee. Obviously, we were very successful last year in getting our highway bill done, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. This year, we're jumping right in. In fact, we're in the process right now of going through FAA reauthorization. We're going to throw pipeline safety in this year, and we're obviously going to get a WRDA bill done, which we've been able to do. We did last year. One of the more controversial bills, but we were able to do a very bipartisan WRDA bill last year, and we'll do the same thing again this year. Last year with the highway bill, obviously a big success. Chairman Schuster and myself, when we came together and talked about how we wanted to do this, we wanted to work out the majority of the problems ahead of time so that we didn't have the hiccups that we have seen in the past moving forward. We made it an all-inclusive bill, a very bipartisan bill, working with Ranking Member DeFazio and the folks on the other side. We were able to put together a 5-year bill, which is the biggest thing. That's the biggest plus coming out of this, is allowing our state departments of transportation to be able to plan ahead, to not go through this process of year after year trying to figure out short-term extensions, trying to figure out what is going to be funded, what isn't going to be funded, and how you move forward. That does more to cripple our state transportation programs than anything else. The original proposal was a 6-year bill. Very happy with being able to settle on a 5-year bill. And to be quite honest with you, it had more to do with funding than anything else. We've got our own funding issues in Washington moving forward. The Highway Trust Fund is a true trust fund. In fact, aviation and highways are still true trust funds in Washington, D.C. That money is walled off and is only used for those specific purposes. We want to make sure that that stays that way. But moving forward, we have to figure out some long-term funding proposals and trying to figure out how we continue to fund transportation projects in the future, in terms of seeing less and less dollars coming from those traditional user fees through gas tax, and trying to figure out how we move forward with those vehicles, obviously, that aren't using gas, the hybrids. We're going to be looking at a number of things as we move through the next year or two. Vehicle miles traveled, we're seeing a couple of pilot projects that are being looked at there. Everything's on the table. Tolling is a possibility. That's not one of my favorites by any means, but it is obviously on the table, and just a variety of different ways to fund our federal transportation programs moving forward. The highway bill, $305 billion bill. That's $5 billion for the state of Missouri over the life of it. It's about $445 million more per year, which is obviously a good thing, something that I obviously worked on to make sure that Missouri is taken care of. To kind of give you a top line, I guess, on some of the changes in some of the programs. We did refocus some existing dollars into a couple of new freight project programs. What these allow is our departments of transportation are going to be able to get a little bit more creative, and these are for programs that have national importance, regional importance. These are programs that they're a little harder to be able to do through a state's allotment, to be able to apply for these. Very pleased about that. There's a little over $10 billion that is in that program. We also maintained the 15% for the BRO program. Missouri has been very good at utilizing those dollars. We obviously are a state that has some of the highest number of off-system bridges in the country, and we've seen our counties do a fantastic job moving forward. The last highway bill, we actually had to, because we've been so successful in the state of Missouri, we had to rewrite the criteria for that. I wrote it in such a way that we were able to include Missouri going forward, and Kansas for that matter, moving forward, and we're obviously able to maintain that. We converted STP, or the Surface Transportation Program, and TAP into block grant programs. We combined them into two, and we increased the percentage to local governments to 55%. So that's obviously going to be a very huge process moving forward. That's basic roads and bridges. That's our basic program. And then one of the biggest things we did too is dealing with the EPA. States are going to be able to use their own environmental regulations more so than, or be able to use those rather than EPA, as long as they are at least as long as they are similar, I guess you might say. We're still going through the process of trying to figure out exactly what that means, but the intent and the goal is to make it easier for the states to be able to move forward on projects without the EPA getting in their way and making them more expensive and moving forward. States do a little bit better job, in my opinion, of regulating their environmental issues than the federal government does, and particularly with the EPA the way it is now. We had a couple other small things in the bill. We're able to reauthorize the Import-Export Bank. Obviously a very good thing. We also did a little bit of stuff on rail when it comes to Amtrak and the way they operate, and moving forward and giving private companies a little bit more access to be able to bid on some of those routes. Two very good things that obviously were a part of the highway bill and moving forward that are going to be good to the state of Missouri. With that, I can take questions. We can talk about FAA reauthorization as well. Some interesting things taking place there in terms of changes to air traffic control, how we manage it, funding of air traffic control, whether that stays a complete government entity or we move that outside of the federal government. Those are all things that are on the table moving forward, but we obviously want to maintain our airport improvement programs and the money that's there for our counties, municipalities, cities that are obviously maintaining those airports. That's very important to us to make sure that the AIP program stays healthy and funded and allows for our airport authorities to be able to move forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Anything else for Sam?